Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Flynn, and I'm here with
Scott Lang,
and we are the Band Dads. Here to bring you a podcast about something that we care very dearly about, which is music education and band.
Some of you are here because you want to learn about all things band. Some of you are here because you want to see a train wreck, and the answer is yes to both of those. They don't care why you're here. We're going to answer all the questions. We're going to say the things you're thinking. We're going to debunk all the myths.
Yep. This is the Band Dads Podcast.
The podcast by and for confused band parents.
Oh, is that the tagline? Hey everyone, Chris Flynn here again with
John Williams.
John Williams, like
I'm bored
the
being
conductor.
They can't tell me. Yeah, they can't tell that it's not
brilliant score.
They
writer?
don't know that I'm not John Williams.
I can hear your voice.
I'm going with John Williams for the rest of the episode.
Are you really?
Yeah.
I can call myself whatever I want?
Yeah, I call you whatever I want.
Oh, okay. Oh, interesting.
That took a minute.
Oh, interesting that you say that. So, Chris Flynn here with John Williams.
This is not going to end well for me in the edit phase.
Chris Flynn here with John Williams. And we are still the Band Dads?
Composers.
Oh, boy.
The band composers.
Oh, my whole rhythm is
Listen, I am going to ride this for the entire episode.
Folks, we are now in episode 5 of the Band Dads podcast, which is technically part 2 of our money episode as it relates to band. And today we're going to talk about cost, actual money that you invest in this activity, which I know is something that people want to have a discussion about.
You know, people at home are like, finally, we're going to get to the bottom of this like Dogecoin-esque money grab by the band director.
Which yes, ultimately it's funny because, you know, when I took over, again, I do social media for our band, and the first time that I really understood when I needed to build an audience on social media, it was to basically make memes and make jokes and make fun of band. And one of the first ones that really was popular was ultimately, I'll set the scene for you guys. It's a clip of Richard Gere from American Gigolo saying, "How much is it going to cost me to get you off my back?" And then it cuts to Dr. Evil from Austin Powers, which says $1 million. And it's supposed to be a conversation between a parent and a band director. And that was very, very popular and drove a lot of traffic to our Instagram account. So there's no question, I am aware very early on that this is a triggering subject for people.
Yeah, so the first episode, if you go back and listen to episode 4, we talked about kind of what is the value of band, and we use both real and fixed, and both, you know, more ephemeral and more difficult to quantify.
Right.
But now we're going to drill down, and we're going to make cash register sounds, and you're going to give me whatever's in your wallet because I'm a band director and you're a band parent, and that's how it works. I ask and you give it to me.
Actually, he's not wrong. I'm just going to prepare myself right now. You know what? Probably not very much. I'm not a cash person. You know what I am though, and this is maybe, I think this is something that some people do. I'm one of these guys. I carry these guys around.
You carry a $2 bill?
Yeah, it's like good luck. It's like a good luck thing. I don't know why.
I like that you're holding it up for the audience. Like, we're a podcast, Chris. They can't.
You already said what
$2.
it was, and you know the 5 people that are going to watch this on YouTube should at least see that there is a genuine $2 bill in my hand. That I'm not counterfeiting money or something.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about real money, let's talk about how schools get money.
Schools get money. So yeah, because ultimately we're going to talk about band fees and all of that stuff to begin with. But before we even get there, as a parent, I guess I need to understand, am I paying for the whole thing? Where's it coming from to begin with? So yeah, how do we start?
So there's a couple interesting kind of philosophical conversations here, which is, number one, when you're talking about band in the school day, the staffing, the teacher, the facilities, by and large, most of the instruments are covered by the school.
Okay.
Your school is covered by tax dollars. That's the bottom line. It's paid by your property tax, which is inherently a very problematic way to fund a school because newer schools in richer areas derive more property tax than poorer schools in more need of repair that don't derive property tax. But we're going to set that aside.
One of the reasons I moved here was affordable property tax, as a matter of fact. So certainly I could see if I knew that my money was going towards those schools, maybe I'd be willing to pay a little more. Okay,
so we've determined that, you know, the most of what happens inside a school day is funded by, in fact, the school, as it should be.
Sure.
But when you look at a co-curricular activity, which is band, that once it leaves the school day, it's by and large not paid for in any way, shape, or form by the school.
None of it.
Now, Some of it, you may have uniforms, which may be 20 years old or depreciated, or they may be covered by band fees and by booster costs. But if you look at our band, and we live in a highly supportive district in rural suburbia that, wants good things for kids. We after 20 years, we got new uniforms.
Gotcha.
But our instrument budget is not provided by the school district. The staffing of the kids, all the techs that work with them are not provided by the school district.
Okay, that makes sense, yep.
The band director, by and large, is not compensated for their time outside of the school day.
Okay.
Transportation is either a fee that's charged to the organization or may not be covered by the school district, but only to football games, not to competition.
I was going to say, but transportation ultimately is generally, depending on the trip, provided, well, at least I see, it looks like school buses. So are we saying that?
But you're charged a fee for that.
Interesting.
You can receive an invoice from your school district. And it's become, as a revenue generating thing, now schools are charging organizations for facilities. So a Monday night rehearsal is $150 charge for the lights. Saturday rehearsal, you're charged for air conditioning for the building. That as funding has been cut to the schools, they've had to become, I don't want to say incestuous, but they've had to feed off their own in order to get those funds. So the important thing for parents to understand is the good, which is your tax dollars are funding everything that happens bell to bell by and large. Funding it adequately? Probably not. But funding it. But once you leave the school day, for the large majority of organizations, none of those resources come from your actual property taxes. They come from student fees and booster groups.
So I was quiet there for a second, but I was kind of giving Scott a perplexed look for those that can't see it, video, which does exist on YouTube, by the way. Bandad's podcast at YouTube. It kind of upsets me that that's the case. You're telling me that
it upsets me more.
My school district is nickel and diming my program, my director, who, to your point, I know how much time those individuals put into this program. And those people are being treated like that? So
this is an interesting story. I was in Oklahoma, and I want to make the Steve Martin joke from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. Oklahoma, and you bang your pots together. I'm sorry, I needed to do that. And I was talking to a band director.
I thought you were going to start singing.
No, I'm not going to do that.
No?
And he said to me, I said, what do you make here? And he said, I make $35,000. Now, he had 10 years experience and a master's degree.
Goodness. Now, is that salaried or?
Salaried.
It is salaried.
$35,000. That was what he got paid to be a teacher.
Okay.
And I said, what's your band stipend? And he said, $12,000. And then he said, what do you make to be a teacher? I said, I make $45,000. And he said, what's your band stipend? I said, $2,500, all the Saturdays, all the band camps, everything. And I looked at him and I laughed and I said, why on God's green earth would you be a teacher for $35,000?
Honestly.
And he didn't miss a beat. He goes, why on God's green earth would you be a band director for $2,500? You could be an English teacher and it would be the same pay after taxes.
Gotcha.
So no, they're not compensated outside of the school day.
Gotcha.
So the other thing you need to think about is the second philosophical discussion. First one is, should a school be supporting extracurricular activities? They have an ethical, moral, educational responsibility to fund a science class.
That's a slippery slope for extracurricular activities. It is.
How much do they pay of the football team's uniforms? Those are rotated every year.
Sure.
The band's every 20 years.
Yep.
How much of their equipment, their tackling equipment, their dummies are maintained by the school? None of the band's equipment is. 90% of band directors do not have an annualized budget for instrument replacement.
Is this
90%?
90% is a lot.
Now let me be
90% is a lot.
The key word is annualized. In other words, I may get a dollar figure. Here's $100. Annualized meaning you can expect $7,000 a year, so you can plan for multi-year purchases like a drum line or new marimbas. Or 90% of band directors do not receive an annualized budget for instrument replacement. And folks, if you don't know what a sousaphone costs, it's about $7,000. A marimba can be anywhere from 4 to 14, depending on the marimba. Like a set of timpani, a drum line's $20,000 to $25,000, depending on the size of your drum line, and they get nothing from the school. So is there, because the band plays at the football game,
right?
The band represents the school.
Yeah.
Is there an ethical responsibility to fund extracurricular activities?
So that was going to be my question, because I think that you see plenty of examples of this in other scenarios, especially, let's go to, college athletics and things like that as well, which you don't see all those things treated at the same level, mostly because they believe there's some sort of, income or something that drives those decisions. So I guess that would be the question is are those things skewed because has band not been able to find a way to monetize itself in the same way that a football game?
Okay, but I wouldn't use Basha, for example, because that's our son's school and they have a state championship football team.
Yes.
But for 15 years, I had 200 kids in the marching band. That means 400 to 500 parents come in and pay the gate admission. And that team had 2 winning seasons the entirety of my career.
Okay.
We were filling the stands. We were driving the revenue, but we weren't necessarily seeing the residual of those sales.
That's not okay, Skyline. That would be very upsetting if I were you in that position.
I was able to make that case.
Okay.
Now, talking about money here. So we've talked about how schools are funded. And we've talked about the philosophical dilemma of do you fund extracurricular activities that are you responsible as a school and a citizenry to fund extracurricular activities and to what level? And without going down the rabbit hole, we could talk about lower crime rate, lower juvie rates, lower rate. There's a valuation of that. But
sure.
I want to do an interesting thought exercise for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So having a curious mind, I decided one year to take my band, and I deemed every child an employee.
Okay.
And I took all my rehearsal schedule hours, put them together, and I paid the minimum wage for attending those hours. We averaged about 20 hours a week.
Okay.
Then I took my section leaders and I gave them a $5 pay bump above minimum wage because they have managerial.
Sure, they're like senior level. Yeah.
I took my techs. And I actually punched in their wage, which was next to nothing that I paid them.
Okay.
And I used my actual salary and factored in, and then I used parent volunteer hours as unpaid.
Okay.
And I calculated them up. Care to guess what my payroll was for a marching band season?
This was your band was what size?
It was anywhere from 180 to 220. I don't remember how big they were when I did this thought exercise.
Okay. Minimum wage. I mean, I know what minimum wage is today. I would say, oh boy, $500,000.
It was more than $1 million.
Was it really?
And here's what was crazy is if you extrapolated out over an entire school year, it was just over $2 million.
So that was just for that season.
Yeah. Now that didn't factor in my facilities, and I had the largest facility on campus other than the stadium.
Yeah.
I had the auditorium. I had the largest asset inventory in the entire school. It's not even close.
Good point.
I have the largest liability in that I'm traveling with students all around, taking them places and doing things.
Right.
I had the highest staff to student ratio of any extracurricular activity. So I took all that, the $2 million, and I called my local city chamber of commerce. And I taught in Tempe at that time. Okay. And would you be surprised to find out that when I described who I was, I didn't give them a name. I said, I'm a business. I'm looking to relocate in your area. Not factoring in facilities, not factoring in production costs, not factoring in distribution, just factoring employee hours and taxes paid on those employee hours. Here are my numbers. Where would I be in this city? And they said, you would be the 3rd largest employer in the city behind
No kidding.
Arizona State University and Motorola.
In Tempe. That makes sense. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
A little high school marching band was the 3rd, and that didn't factor in my assets, my inventory, the facilities.
Sure. So you talked about liabilities. I mean, cost to insure those things.
When we're talking about a band fee, and let's be honest, our band fee is what, Chris?
$750.
Okay, so we framed how schools are funded. Fair point. Okay, good.
Yes.
And then we talked about that the kind of the size and the scope of the operation, 3rd largest in the city. We talked about is there a philosophical, moral, and ethical responsibility to fund extracurricular activities? I think it's important now to just to dial in on the dollars. Okay. So our band fee was what?
$750.
Okay, you're better with numbers than I am.
Okay.
I'm really good with colors, Chris, but I'm John Williams. So, numbers.
Colors?
Are my thing. Yeah. Scratch.
Hold on. If John Williams happens to be listening, I believe you are good with numbers. I don't think fake John Williams is over here is doing you any justice. I'm just saying that. I want John Williams to be a fan of this podcast. I don't want him to hear that and turn it off.
He doesn't need to be a fan as long as he's listening.
Well, he may not be if you're insulting
he probably
him.
Turned it off.
That's what I'm saying.
Point.
Yes.
Okay. So it's $750 band fee.
Yes.
Okay. But it is subsidized.
What do you mean by that?
By the boosters.
Okay. Subsidized.
Subsidized in terms of they are contributing revenue to the operation of that band, relieving you as the parent of that cost. So $750 per child is not the cost of running that organization for that season, correct?
I mean, I would assume it's not, but I'm not sure what other visibility I have. So that's where I would like to.
We were at a booster meeting last night, Treasury reports.
I'm acting like the common band parent. I'm playing a role.
Oh, and John Williams was not at the band booster meeting last night.
John Williams, I was playing a role here because, I think the majority. So yes, I go to booster meetings and I know, and I think I said this before, but the population that's represented of band parents at a booster meeting is not very large.
No.
And I would encourage you all, because we're going to start talking about things like how boosters are involved and how they support the band as well. Go to those meetings so you can understand what they do, because it is incredibly valuable and you should be a part of that as well. That's my little PS.
Okay, so as a data analyst,
yes.
Is it fair to say, and I'm going to use a number, but I'm not going to be that far off.
Okay.
The boosters contributed $30,000 to offset costs associated with the organization this year.
Okay.
Whether it was buying of props, whether it was feeding the band on Friday nights, feeding the bear regiment, whether it was providing for fuel for the diesel trucks or the cost to go to San Antonio. So if it's $30,000 and we have 130 kids, it's fair to say, ballpark, I don't have a calculator, an additional $260 per child was a cost basis. So $260 at $750, it's $1,000 per child to run our band. Fair point?
Yes.
Okay, that's a fair way to look at numbers, correct?
I would say it's fair.
So I, as a parent, I'm getting to buy something at 25% off.
Oh, yes. And who doesn't love a 25% off sale?
Yeah.
Huge.
So
that'll push me to make my purchase for sure.
So I'm curious, just because I don't think you thought about that way, does that make you feel better or worse about the $750 knowing it wasn't the full cost?
Much better for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we took 2 trips this year.
We did.
And our band director can squeeze a penny out of a dollar like no man I've ever met in my life. You heard that right. If you're in a major performing marching arts organization, we went to San Antonio and to Bands of America, a regional, and our band fee, including travel, was $750.
This is true.
Yeah. Most people would, every time I tell band directors that, they're like, is he selling kidneys or other organs that I should be aware of? Like,
I mean,
okay.
If he's got a side hustle, I don't want to ruin it for him. So maybe we stop there. That's all. Whatever he's doing, it's working. Let's leave it alone.
And listen, Miles, as long as it keeps our band fee low, we're not gonna judge. So $1,000 is the cost.
Yes.
Even though $750. So parents, as you look at your band fee, whether it's $150 or $1,150, know that doesn't represent the total cost of educating your child.
Yeah.
Someone is subsidizing that.
Yeah.
So look at the whole cost, $1,000, $750.
Yep.
What would you guess of the remaining $750 was trip related?
I would feel like the majority of it is. I would guess. I mean, knowing just because knowing what those trips were, 70% maybe. I would feel like the majority of it would be.
Okay, so I'm going to use a number because I'm not good at math because I'm John Williams. I'm good at making jingles.
Would you stop slandering John Williams?
I'm not. He would be lucky to be me. Maybe he's walking around saying, "Wait a minute, wait, did we not cover in the last one? I'm in the Library of Congress. I'm in the Library of Congress.
Scott, we might not make it to 8 episodes.
I'll bet you he's walking around telling people he's Scott Lang.
We're gonna get a cease and desist the second this episode comes out. So, folks, if you never see episode 6, you know what happened. John Williams.
I would be kind of honored to be sued by John Williams. Like, that'd be kind of cool.
I guess you're not wrong.
I mean, you could be sued by a lot worse people, like the Village People or something. I mean, like, John Williams would be not a bad way to go. Okay, we're going to focus for you, the listener.
Okay.
So let's say 50%. So now we're talking about the band fees, really $250.
Okay.
Travel, which is not going to the band, is going to a bus company, a hotel room, or whatever.
Sure.
Granted, you, the parent, are absorbing that cost. I don't want to minimize that.
Yeah.
But $250 is the band fee. That goes to the actual band that's teaching your children and providing supplies and resources, drill, music, custom arrangements, transportation.
That sounds insane.
It does.
To say out loud.
$250 is going to a travel company. $250 is being subsidized by the band parents.
Yeah.
And when you look at your numbers, folks, when you crunch numbers and you look at the sticker shock that is that band fee, that cost, I think you got to separate yourself emotionally from it and say, okay, but what am I getting for this band cost, but who else is subsidizing it? Is the school district paying for the busing? Is the school district providing uniforms or dry cleaning of the uniform?
Yeah.
Are they providing the drumline equipment as a part of the budget? And so you kind of frame it that way. And I would think, Chris, and we didn't talk about this before this episode, that $750 looks pretty cheap now, doesn't it?
So to your point, if I'm parsing it out in that way, and I'm saying $250 is ultimately what's going to that program, I don't understand how they make it through Bandcamp. That's not even probably enough for groceries for my family for a week.
I couldn't believe. I will tell you, and I'm friends with our band director, and I just love him, and his assistant director. And when I was at the opening band meeting, knowing what I know, because just for the listeners on this podcast, and I don't want to make light of $750. But in the really highly competitive organizations, the national level organizations,
sure,
band fees are anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500, depending on whether travel's included.
Yeah, makes sense.
And that if you don't know that the really elite competitive organizations are operating multi-million-dollar operations. You follow Brownsburg band?
Yes.
Yeah, and Chris Kaflik, who's probably not listening to this because he's got common sense, is the director there. I'm actually going to work with him in a couple weeks.
Doesn't that seem more likely than John Williams? Doesn't that seem like a more realistic outcome? But he's probably not listening. Anyway.
Words hurt, Chris. Words. Doesn't that seem more likely that Scott's a nobody than John Williams?
Sorry, Scott. I'll find a way to stroke your
one of the things I'll never forget, because I'm going to kind of turn down, you got to watch the Brownsburg band.
Yes.
He did a TikTok at State this year in which it was ready to go to State. The first semi pulled out. The second semi pulled out. The third semi pulled out.
Yeah.
The first 20-foot trailer pulled out.
Sure.
And then a 18-foot box truck pulled out.
Yeah.
And I literally texted him and said, are you a marching band or a moving company? I don't, but that's the level groups are operating.
So funny you say that. So, again, we went to the San Antonio Super Regional this year. So the day that we chose to go to tour the Alamo, and we're inside and kind of doing the tour and walking around to see the frescoes that were uncovered and all that fun stuff. There were other parents there from other bands, and there happened to be some parents from Flower Mound, right, kind of there next to us. And
Brent Biskup's group, phenomenal group.
Amazing. And we had seen them in prelims the day before, so we had seen their performance, and of course just wanted to commend them because as a band parent, you understand how much goes into it. But to your point, that was one of those moments I didn't necessarily know the numbers, but when we had a conversation about getting the band there and what goes into it and all that fun stuff. Yeah, that parent shared that it took them 15 coach buses to bring their people to that event. That blew my mind to hear that for sure.
The largest marching band in the country is not too far from there. It's called the Allen Escadrille.
Okay.
There's 880 kids in the marching band.
That's insane. Which is good, not in a bad way.
A band director for every...
Unbelievable.
But I think that it's important to share that for perspective. That, $750 is a lot.
Yeah.
And, but I will say when Miles announced it, I walked up and I said, I want to make out with you right now.
Whoa.
Like, oh yeah, no. I mean, $750 for 2 trips and the band fee.
Yeah.
Going to Bands of America regionals, not once, but twice. But I share that with you because I think, when you're talking about the Flower Mounds, and we're going to get to that.
Okay.
It's important not only to have the philosophical understanding of where money comes from and what the differentiator is outside and inside the school day, but also to frame money in what am I paying for, what am I getting, and what is someone else paying for.
Sure.
But then looking at what are other people paying? Because if you buy a couch and it's $300 and you're like, that's a lot for a couch, and you found out other people paid $800 for the same couch.
Right.
Because it's the same B flat.
Yeah.
It's the same F sharp.
That's a good point.
It's the same quarter note.
That's a good point.
It's the same football field.
Sure.
So it helps you better have a sense of perspective of whatever that dollar figure is, where it came from, what it's paying for, what it's not paying for, who's paying for it, and what other people are paying for that same exact product.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
Data analyst, Chris?
Yes.
I'm going to run a number by you.
Okay.
398 hours were accounted for in marching band this year.
That's okay.
Okay. Now, I didn't dial it down to the exact minute, but took rehearsal hours, performance hours, Friday night football game.
Okay.
We'll call it 400 hours.
Okay. Yeah.
400 hours.
Yeah.
Do the math in your head. It's $750.
Oh boy. I don't know. $2 an hour maybe.
Yeah. And if you took out,
that's crazy.
It's $2 an hour.
That's crazy.
Like, what would 398 hours of group tutoring cost?
I'm trying to, again, I'm
more than 750.
Way more than 750. I'm just trying to do that math
What would
in my head. But
398 hours of club hockey cost?
Multiple thousands of dollars.
What would 398 hours of group counseling cost?
Yeah, again, same.
Yeah.
Multiples, thousands of dollars.
What would 398 hours of childcare cost?
Oh my God.
And that's what that is. If you separate it, that's not the purpose of marching band, but that's the byproduct.
I mean, you're not wrong. You receive those similar services as a result. Yeah.
For $1.90 an hour.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
How do we pull it off? I guess is now the question. It's not, I'm not mad about the fee anymore. It's how the heck do we even get away with it?
You wonder why it's not more.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
Yes.
Okay. So
absolutely.
Now we're going to get to, and actually one of our viewers, when we announced the podcast, came unglued on us about this next subject.
Yes.
Does more money buy more success?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like asking me, does more money buy a bigger house? Yes. Of course it does. Can I buy a nicer car with more money? Of course I can. Absolutely.
When people are going, they want to say, well, no, money doesn't equate to success. I'm like, you must live in a different country than I do.
Seriously.
Because you can't have great streets and low taxes. It doesn't work that. There's a causation.
Absolutely.
Am I using the term correctly?
Yes.
Okay. There's a causation between the money you spend on infrastructure and the quality of your street.
100%.
There's a causation between the money you spend on taxes and police response time.
Clearly, yes.
The same causation, whether you realize it or not, parents, is that more money buys more staff.
Right.
It buys more instructional time.
Yeah.
It buys custom uniforms.
Yep.
It buys custom drill.
Sure.
Custom arrangements.
Sure.
It provides resources that can and will always have a causational result on scoring.
And I don't want to burst your bubble if you're going to maybe go into any of these details, but just talking about maybe even some of the unsung heroes when it comes to, because you mentioned being a band director, some of the techs I really feel like are some of the unsung heroes of these programs. Like, yeah, they announce the band director at every competition and all that fun stuff, but unless you are really there in the weeds with the kids and see the techs and what they do to instruct those kids, really every rehearsal, I really do feel like they don't get enough credit. So I'm curious what the cost is of something like that. Like how much goes into paying for a tech to work with my group for a season?
So obviously it's going to depend on the group, but I think a good number to kind of rest upon is somewhere in the 3,000 to 5,000 range, depending how many days a week are they there? Are they a caption head, or are they just a lowly tech? Are they someone with a lot of experience?
Gotcha.
Are you competing at the highest levels?
Yeah.
Because that's going to whittle your tech pool down to about 3 people.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, no, that's fair.
I think, when you look at that, here's some hard numbers. A custom arranged show on a semi-competitive level.
Sure.
Now, I'm not talking about you're going to Grand Nationals.
Okay.
But that you're going to, someone at our level where it's a really successful marching band, we're not going to win Grand Nationals, but we want something that is designed for us.
Yeah.
That's going to run you right in about the $7,000 range just for the music.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good point. And I think maybe that gets overlooked sometimes too, that people need to understand the music that they perform has a cost in itself.
The drill, those little dots that they're marching.
Yes.
Some charge per head, some charge per group, some charge for the length of the show. But a good figure to rest upon is right around the same cost, about $7,000 a show. Jeez. So you're into it for $14,000 just for your drill and your music. Now, the choreography for the color guard.
Okay.
Not the tech who teaches it.
Right.
The person who designs it.
Okay.
Is going to run you probably somewhere in the 3,000 to 5,000 range. So now you're at 18 to 20,000. We're just going to say 20,000 because I'm going to throw in body movement.
Okay.
Which is choreography for so you're at $20,000.
Okay.
Now there's a program designer. Someone who puts it all together and says, okay, color guard, I need a big moment here. Drill writer, I want them layered here. In that same moment, music arranger, I want to do this. Drumline guy, I need a big hit. I need the bass drums facing side one for the impact. And the color guard uniform is going to be shades of earth tones. The silks are going to be a color. They put it all together. And they're going to run you somewhere in about the $10,000 range.
Interesting. Okay.
And so for a mid-level program, and not all programs use a program designer per se.
Okay.
Some band directors like that
Take
art
on the
form.
responsibility
Yeah,
themselves.
they like,
Okay.
hey, let's grab this music and put it together and do this, and the theme is this. But a mid-level program who has all elements, you have a program designer at the top who designs the whole thing.
Right.
Coordinates with the music arranger, the drill writer, and the choreographer. Then you have the choreographer, the caption heads, choreography, percussion, brass, woodwind.
Yeah.
And then you have the texts that work underneath them. When you put it all together at a competitive level, you're at about $35,000 before the kids ever get taught anything.
And this is what I'm still getting for my $2.
Yes. And then they show up and actually start teaching, and the cost raises to about $50,000 for the season to operate the organization.
Wow.
Now, we haven't talked about feeding the band yet.
Oh my gosh.
We haven't talked about upkeep of uniforms or props.
Oh my gosh.
We haven't talked about, that production that a successful band at a upper mid-range level, it's going to be, all said and done, the cost of your season is going to be somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 without a trip. I mean, if you factor in everything, we got to get new drum heads. The silks have to be swapped out. We got to buy more color guard poles.
Sure.
So, you're talking about that literally is something they're getting for $2 an hour.
That's $2.
But it begs the question. Okay, so it begs the question. I think it's safe to say we live in a pretty nice area.
Yes, we do.
We're not.
Yes, we do.
We're not. All the listeners, but we're not in Scottsdale. We're not like in $1 Million Home. But
oh my God, now you're slandering Scottsdale. So Dayton and Scottsdale are both not listening to our podcast now.
I'm okay with that, Chris.
Wow.
I'm going to be honest.
Because you're pretending to be John Williams, so if John Williams shows up in Scottsdale, they'll be mad at him, not you.
They can afford Scottsdale. People can afford John Williams. So
yeah, that's fair.
So, is it fair to say that if money equates to better opportunities, better instruction, more success, is that fundamentally and philosophically fair?
Yes.
That money should buy an education?
I mean,
are we not the public schools?
When you say when money should buy it, I guess, again, I'm sorry, I'm more framing the value of what you've presented to me. So is what I'm buying for my $750 band fee? Yes, absolutely.
Is it fair that someone who spends more money is likely going to beat your child in what's supposed to be a competitively leveled activity?
Yes, it is.
It's fair?
Yes,
think so?
I do. That's how the world works.
Okay, it's how the world works, but that doesn't
why
make
be
it fair.
naive about it?
No, but that doesn't make it fair. I didn't say it isn't happening. I'm not saying it's not the way our world works, but is it? We are public schools, and every child should have the same opportunity to be successful.
But I appreciate your theory. I don't believe it's unfair as it is today, because there are ways that, again, if to your point, if we wanted to increase our band fee, we could do more with it. We could be more competitive. So there are ways, if we wanted to go along with the way the system works, we could accommodate that for sure. But in order to accomplish it being fair, you would have to completely overhaul the entire thing. You would have to set limits. You would have to say that this is a fixed budget per band.
Yes.
Per would literally have to say everybody is on the same field at this level.
By the way, Texas has kind of done this.
Has it really?
Yeah, Texas. It's called UIL, is University Interscholastic League in Texas.
Yes.
It governs all marching activities, all music activities. They have very specific rules. A show, if you're under 100 people, can't be longer than 7 minutes.
Okay.
It's too expensive to purchase, too difficult to put together. You cannot start drill before August 1st. Everyone has the same start date.
Okay.
You can only rehearse 8 hours a week. Nobody can rehearse more than any other group.
But is there not workarounds for that kind of stuff?
No.
Though?
Oh, I will tell you. I'm not saying there isn't a human being bending it.
Okay.
But they don't put the band on sanction. They don't put the director on sanction. They will sanction the football team if the band goes over 5 minutes.
Because I'm thinking if that was in my environment, but I'm being very, very competitive because the marching bands in Texas are incredible and I have to be competitive. I'm thinking as a band director, I'm feeding my section leader some notes, and the section leader's having a meeting on the side with his group.
No,
outside of school to practice.
I work with, and I'm not saying there isn't an outlier, but I work with a lot of Texas bands. I've never seen anybody break that rule.
I can appreciate that
because it will end your career.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called the 8-hour rule. But so I really
can
like that rule.
That. Yeah.
No one can rehearse more than, you know what? No one in Texas ever rehearses on a Saturday. They can't. It would exceed the 8-hour rule.
Gotcha.
I appreciate that no one can start drill in April, August 1st. You can do long tones and fundamentals.
Okay.
You cannot do your show until August 1st. So part of that exists, that structure, and a lot of that is for competitive landscape.
Which makes sense.
It levels it. The second thing it does is it ceases the arms race. You rehearse 9 hours, I'm going to rehearse 10.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Here's what they don't account for, which I think would be interesting. You a sports fan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Salary cap.
That's exactly, that's the model that I'm thinking of when it comes to putting everybody on the same page.
What if we said whether it's a cost per child?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or a cost per class, like if you're in class B, you can't spend this much.
Okay.
Or cost for length of show. But I've always believed, and I said to a friend of mine who runs a drum corps, I said, if you're marching music's major leagues, how come you're the only professional sports league without a salary cap? There's a reason the Blue Devils were always in the top two.
I could see that, yeah.
They hire the best staff and pay them a ridiculous salary that they would never leave.
Yeah.
No other corps can match what they do because of their bingo operation.
Gotcha.
So the salary cap, that would be the way that I'd solve
that. Makes a lot of sense.
But I want to kind of close out this, unless I've missed something you want to talk about, with the analyst, Chris.
Okay.
So put your analyst hat on.
Okay.
Turn it sideways or something. He's wearing a ball cap. I want him to.
I'm not going to be on record anywhere with a sideways hat. I'm so sorry.
You won't put it backwards? You won't change your analyst hat?
No.
How are they going to know you're in analyst mode?
You're just going to have to trust me. If you can sit here and claim that you're John Williams without doing anything, you're just going to have to believe that I can be an analyst.
That's a fair point.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
The analyst hat on.
Yeah.
Could you build me, if I got you, I can print them out, this year's state championships.
Okay.
You could see every caption breakdown because we talked about that in episode 2.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
You could see, all of the numbers.
Yes.
And if I could get you budgets, what was spent on that production.
Sure.
Could you build not only an arc of when it's less when spending more doesn't result in higher scores, where that arc bends?
Yeah.
And could you build a predictive model based on a state placement for 2025
to try and sound
based
like a
on budget?
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you anything about the band or the band director. I'm going to tell you what they spend.
Yeah.
Could you build those two things?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely, it could. So we talked about a couple of different things in the previous episode of ways I might go about doing that. And certainly, again, doing some sort of regression with all of those different multiple variables would absolutely, and again, I even talked about graphing it. Certainly, it would, I could create those things and we could have a good visual. I'm sure, yeah, absolutely. Would the goal of the outcome being, to your point, if you could find that right number, are we trying to find what the salary cap is? What's the magic number?
Yeah, that would be where I would probably,
Gotcha.
I would want to classify it. So if we believe that money is associated with continued success, which I think we all agree upon.
Yeah.
Is that we could either put a hard cap based on a division,
right?
Hard cap based on a per student cost.
Sure.
And then be able to communicate to teachers and kids and parents of, okay, but here's where the spending more doesn't get you less. And I would tell you, not only just money, there's a point where rehearsing more yields less gain.
That's a good point too.
And that there's a point where investing more is less gain.
That's kind of when you said 8 hours a week, that's my first thought is then how do we see the performances that we do? It almost feels like they're limited, like their hands are tied. So the fact that they can pull that off with having, I guess, a limitation on how much they can rehearse, is it just that much more impressive?
Yeah, it does make it more impressive.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And there are other factors. The fact, are they auditioning kids? So it's not every kid makes it.
That's a good point.
There's a cultural part where you come in expecting to be.
Do we want that? Like for our band, is that what we want? Because we're talking, again, the whole point of many of these conversations is how inclusive our activity is.
I would agree. And my answer would be to you, it depends. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
If I've got a kid who can't be successful out there, it's going to be a train wreck. I want to find a place for them in the organization, but it might not be on the field.
Okay.
If I have a student who's just physically not ready.
Okay.
If I have 400 kids in 180 uniforms, that's just not logistically feasible.
Gotcha.
If I have 4 tubas and 19 tuba players, I have a significant obstacle.
Yeah.
So philosophically, I believe, and have always found a place for every child.
Yeah.
But there are some obstacles to overcome.
So is there any room for, again, a model that does allow for it, meaning that, and again, I don't want to keep, patting our program on the back for what they pull off, but we had a very similar instance this winter season where there was so much interest in the indoor percussion ensemble group that it was way too large to assign all of those kids to be able to participate. So you easily could have just done tryouts, right? Hit the number that you need for your show, 30 kids, whatever it is, and call it a day. That's not what they did. They committed to a second group. So we now have two groups. We have two indoor percussion ensembles. Granted, they are assigned, a division, like an open division, like we talked about.
Right, they're leveled.
Yeah, they're leveled based on their skill set, to be fair to them in the way that they're competing. But is there opportunity maybe for something like that still allows those kids that maybe aren't as good on those initial tryouts to have a means to continue to improve and work on that craft? Because I want to give my directors credit for finding a solution that still makes sure that all those kids that want to be able to participate still get to.
But then I don't disagree with you, and they're phenomenal. But here would be the question.
Yeah.
At what cost? It's appropriate to do that
that's
if you have.
We're talking about a separate season, more fees, and all that stuff.
Infrastructure.
Yeah.
They're rehearsing 4 nights a week because they have to share marimbas.
That's true.
And so that's 4 nights a week that a director's on staff. That's double the techs. That's double the wear and tear on the equipment.
Yeah,
that's they true. Can't compete at the same events on the same weekends because they're sharing drums. I'm not saying that's a bad thing,
right?
But I'm saying at some point you have to look at it and say, you can't have Blue Devil Dreams on a 40-piece band budget.
Right.
And so I think that's a balancing act, and I applaud that they're erring, and I want to say it's an error, but they're erring on the side of involvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it comes at a cost for them.
Yeah.
But I think that, I think it's just really interesting to look at money from the perspective of money and the results and the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And we certainly, the goal again of this conversation, folks, is not to take lightly your investment financially in this activity, absolutely, because that is certainly not the objective. It's to truly break it down in a way, give you a different point of view to understand how much value you are getting for your investment. Again, even at $750, it's a lot of money. Right? It is a lot of money. There's no question. But
and anyone who couldn't afford to pay it was scholarship. To be clear, one in any organization, I will tell you, I have never met a band director in my career of 32 years that excluded a child over money. Never once, not ever. Okay. We find a way. We scholarship them, boosters. We figured out band directors write a check out of their own pocket.
Gotcha.
So no one is left behind because of money alone.
Okay. That sounds like you've in a couple episodes had people, I guess I've challenged people to come back at you and see if they can prove you wrong. So if anybody has a story where that's not true because they couldn't afford their band fee and for some reason we're not allowed to participate, I would like to hear that story.
There are people who may self-select. We can't afford it, so you're not doing band. But there's nobody who said we can't afford it. Can my child be in band? And they were told no.
Okay.
I've never experienced it in 32 years.
Well, so again, folks, we're not trying to make light of your financial investment in this activity, but really for you to look at all aspects of what goes into it and what you get out of it, it's an incredible value.
Yeah, when you put episode 4 and episode 5 together, which is episode 4 of how do you value this experience? And Chris did a masterful job of being objective and being analyst Chris, as well as being dad Chris. And then you look at not only what funds organizations, but who funds organizations, boosters too, and how they're funded and where those dollars go. I can't see where. And then you compare it with others like activities, club sports or tutoring or whatever.
Absolutely, yeah.
I hope that at least gives you a more enlightened or educated perspective on what other monies are at play other than your band fee and where your monies go, and know that, the transparency and the accountability at least are there, that you can watch every dollar and where it goes and see it trickle down into your child's music experience.
Yeah, and if you feel disconnected from that, I mentioned earlier in the episode, join your boosters. Go to those meetings. Be a part of those conversations, because ultimately, if you feel like you're missing out on some information as a result, that's a really good place to start, not only because you proactively will be more involved, but you will have a better understanding of what the boosters are contributing, again, what money is going where, how you can improve fundraising for your school to help offset some of these costs and all that stuff. So be a part of it. Get involved.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm John Williams, and he's
Chris Flynn, actually.
And we're the
Band Dads. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next time. To stay up to date with the Band Dads podcast, please visit banddadspodcast.com. To reach the show, send an email to feedback@banddadspodcast.com. The Band Dads podcast is a 5 Deuce Media production. For more information, visit 5deucemedia.com. That's numeral 5deucemedia.com. For more information on Scott Lang leadership and solutions for music education, visit scottlang.net.